Hello. Well, let's come up with another video. I tend to have a bunch of stuff in the background. So, Megadungeon Musings. Megadungeons, yes. Uh, Back in the early days, they were basically monster hotel rooms with, you know, didn't really make sense. But as we've matured, and there were people back in the day that had dungeons that made sense. They weren't always the middle school kid dungeons that, you've got a dragon in a 10 by 10 room or 50 goblins or 50 orcs in a just a 3 or 4 room area. People started to make dungeons that were civilizations and had stories. So when I would try to make a dungeon, I always try to make one with different sections and environs. And the default world is some ancient world that was destroyed. So I have leftover artifacts detailing the history of the place. I like to leave a little story that you can put the pieces together and see what happened in the dungeon. Normally, it's something really horrible. Different factions. Always like a dungeon that's literally alive and is working against the party. In places that bend space and time. The mythic underworld is described by many of the OSR artists and writers. Magical areas that must be activated by certain classes. A lot of times in the old school games, once the wizard runs out of spells, they're no good. Well, what about magical doors and certain things that can only be unlocked, or magical keys and such can only be done with a wizard present, or a magic user, whatever you want to call them. Um, it has to be more than just a monster hotel, than just but a terrifying living place that's trying to kill you. And when you're outside of town, I always like to have NPCs of a settlement that they act all afraid when the place is mentioned. Oh, the Black Stairs. There's always an old man Eli or Granny Smythe. I warn ye, stir not up this place. 'Tis evil over there. You always want to have somebody with a foreboding warning. Folk horror movies from back in the day seem to have a really big influence on early gaming, as well as the Sinbad movies and things. Me, I like my OSR games to be very, very, very dark ages, medieval for the society. A tiny bit past the Bronze Age into the early Iron Age, with remnants sticking out everywhere of some older civilization that came before, and terrible tales of those times, if there are any. Myself and like many people, the old Stonehill one-page dungeon thing, that was my inspiration for many of dungeon creation. Um, I will have all those books one day in physical form because, I've had the little sample PDFs and gotta say, I'm one of those people. I tend to make my own stuff. So, um, also something that you need to think about when you build a mega dungeon is all things built by man being overtaken by nature. Collapsed sections, water intrusion, mold and decay. Let the players know that smell you smell in old decaying buildings, that feeling when you get when you see someone else's belongings from long ago, long since abandoned, and make you wonder what happened here to make everyone just want to leave their stuff. Um, so just a few things to think about. Mega Dungeon Musings.